This is your Game of Thrones news roundup from last week, super duper late because I've been having some equipment issues. Sorry. Warning, there are spoilers for Game of Thrones in this video. Watch at your own risk.
Stop it! You're spoiling it! You're spoiling everything!
Also, a dragon video is coming really soon. 5 points to Slytherin, not that cheating shithouse Gryffindor, if you can guess what dragon. Is it A, Smag, B, Balerion, or C, Puff, the magic dragon? If you answered anything besides B, get the fuck off my channel. So let's start with everyone's favorite Mad Queen. The one without dragons. Lena said that Game of Thrones filming ended last year about October and she was the 12th person to be done. However, she assured us that doesn't mean anything, and I'm sure Cersei makes it to the end to live happily ever after with Jaime. She shared for the final season it was the first time they got everyone in Belfast for a table read, and it was apparently fun but very emotional. Though she did share what they had done in previous seasons, saying, "They usually give us all the scripts, and if anyone says they don't flick to the end to see if they made it, they're lying." Though we've heard different accounts of what actors do when they get their scripts, some don't want to read to the end, so of course everyone is different and she's just joking around. Lastly, she talked about her send-off by the showrunners, saying, "I was like, it's been 9 years, it's been amazing, and I'm happy to go and find new things. And then I knew David and Dan, our creators, were doing speeches and giving everybody these drawings of the storyboards. And I suddenly got really emotional at the end, trying to head down the stairs. And they all rushed up and trapped me. And then they gave the speech. It was really moving." I know it won't happen, but part of me really wishes they would have recorded these farewell speeches and then put it as bonus material on the DVD releases. I know it's a really private moment, so they didn't, and we probably shouldn't ever hear what they said, but I really want to know what those speeches were like. Anyways, next, Naomi Watts isn't sharing much about the prequel that she's going to be a part of. However, she did talk a little bit about it, while not really sharing anything. It's a fantastic world, isn't it? I think there's so many brilliant elements to that series that it makes it very exciting, very appealing. I don't want to dig myself into a big hole here. All I want to say is it's very exciting. I'll say that again and again and again, and nothing else. So the prequel pilot for The Long Night show, not currently called The Long Night, should begin this February, so we should be getting some leaks really soon. Okay, let's move on to Kit Harington. Every time Kit talks about dragons, which he's part of 2 franchises that have dragons in it, it always cracks me up. First, he hopes he isn't done working with dragons, which I'm sure he isn't. He also wants you to know that the dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise are much happier, but also much naughtier. Game of Thrones dragons are a bit grumpy, according to Kit. But I mean, wouldn't you be if your mom kept losing you?
Where are my dragons?
He of course had a few things to say about Game of Thrones. On Jon Snow, he said, "I think the great thing about playing an incredibly on-comic character for 9 years, who's brooding and taking himself too seriously, is that you can then take the mickey out of yourself for being too brooding and too serious." Kit also talked about the end of Game of Thrones and how he's strangely calm about it, saying that's probably a sign he's grieving. However, he's waiting for another last feeling of, wow, that's over. He also revealed that the ending of Game of Thrones will be emotional for everyone. And also that we're going to be emotionally torn. Oh, and he said there's never going to be another Thrones, which that makes me really sad. In a separate interview, he stated that he had a few wrap parties for the show. In fact, at every location they filmed at, they had a party to finish that location. Adorably, he admitted, "One of the greatest things about Thrones is that we all got on like a real house on fire, and we loved each other very deeply, and we had a good time together, so we're going to celebrate that." I don't know, I'm just happy they all got along so well. Mostly. Onward, Sophie Turner shared the only thing she kept from Game of Thrones was her corset, explaining, "The only thing I kept was a corset. I was thinking about framing it, but I think people might think it's a bit weird. Wearing it would be weird, and it's not the one that covers your boobs." I was trying to think what else of Sansa's she could have kept, but Sansa really didn't get a lot of awesome things throughout the series, did she? Especially compared to other characters. That's kind of a bummer. Oh, and if you know any of Sophie's friends, apparently they know the ending of Game of Thrones, so get that shit out of them, she explained. Terrified. I'm so bad at keeping secrets. I don't think people tell me things anymore because they know I can't keep them. I've already told the ending of Game of Thrones to a few people. I was like, hey, if you want to know, I'll tell you. But it's people that I know, not random people. It's people that I know will keep the secret. I'm putting someone in charge of finding this out. Go forth. Do it. But let's move on to Arya Stark because Maisie had some interesting things to say about Game of Thrones and it ending. She said, I don't know that anyone's going to be satisfied. No one wants it to end, you know? But I'm really proud of this final season. Like, I've always felt ashamed to say things like that. But I am. I'm really proud of all the work that we put in. And yeah, for me, it's like the right time. Yeah, I hope people like it. She knows people will be split no matter what, and it's impossible for everyone to like the ending, and I think she's prepared for that. Apparently talking about the end of Game of Thrones is in right now because Emilia Clarke also talked about the end of Game of Thrones in an interview, saying, I cried like a baby on the last day. I felt completely lost. It was very strange and wonderful to get last Christmas. This part couldn't be more opposite because dragons ain't funny. 10 years is a long time. It's like losing an actual limb. I was 22, a child, when I first walked on the Game of Thrones set. I grew up with her. As hard as it is for any of us to say goodbye to Game of Thrones, I would imagine working on it for 10 years causes a bit more separation anxiety. But she talked about the conclusion of season 8, saying it was a real whopper, especially for Daenerys. If she could not die in childbirth, that would be great. So Davos' actor Liam is making me nervous again because when he was doing an interview and they congratulated him on making it to the end of Game of Thrones, he responded, so far, so far. Not that that does mean anything. We're all going to die, Ryan. We're all going to die. Don't forget one of the phrases in the show. Vela Mogulis. All men must die. D&D, don't you fucking dare. Do not kill Davos. Kill the Stark girls. But not sweet Davos. Hodor's actor Christian talked about whether he's coming back for the final season, where he revealed, if I do, I'd love to bite Bran's head off. He didn't treat me very well. He asked me to hold the door. I'm perfectly happy to go back and cause some havoc if they wanted me to. Though he would have shot his scenes by now if he was in the final season, I don't think this means that he's necessarily not in it. I think he would keep it to himself to make it a surprise. However, a white Hodor would be absolutely amazing. He also talked about his character a bit, including that D&D told him from day one he was going to be a fan favorite. It was challenging in some ways, but showrunners David and Dan told me, you're going to be one of the fan favorites of the show. And this was before we even started. I didn't really understand. I was like, really? But he just says one word, guys. But they turned out to be right. Man, I remember how pissed people were when he died. People really had it out for Bran. Apparently after his character died too, and he was on a plane flying, a lady told him, your character's death made me cry for 3 days. Man, I didn't even cry for 3 days when Stannis died. Interestingly, he had his own theories on his character's ancestry, saying, so I had my own theory. That he was a Clegane because he's big like Gregor and Sandor Clegane, which was completely wrong. I was surprised just like everyone else when I found out what Hodor meant, but I never expected the reaction that came from all over the world. So that's fascinating that the showrunners kept it to themselves and didn't tell him. I guess they wanted it to be shocking when he finally read it because D&D knew Hodor's death for a really long time. Lastly, last week I talked about the runtime for the final episodes and new casting for the Game of Thrones prequel show about the Long Night. On the runtime, we had what appeared to be a leak showing the runtimes of the final episodes when a group of French TV channels held an event showing off their upcoming content. According to their presentation, the first 2 episodes are 60 minutes and the last 4 episodes 80 minutes each, making the final season come to 440 minutes. Now, despite me saying in that video that this wasn't absolutely confirmed and that they haven't finished editing the final season, but I was just sharing this news and the possibilities, I still had some fucking idiots tell me that this wasn't confirmed. Yeah, no shit. That's why I said it. Multiple times. In the video. Stop acting like a ratchet bitch like Vanessa Howard. Alright, on casting news for the prequel about the Long Night, but currently not called The Long Night. A prequel show that takes place about 5,000 years before the main show and follows the coming of the others and how the very divided Seven Kingdoms fought to survive. Last week we found out that they are casting 2 little kids codenamed L2 and W2. These roles will be filled by black actors between the ages of 6 to 10 years old. They stress these kids need to be confident. The need for confidence makes it sound like the 2 actors will be in quite a few scenes, so they need to be able to handle that. The fact these 2 roles are together seems to indicate that the role is for siblings, or more specifically, brothers. And then they are also looking for a young white woman for a character codenamed F2. This actress needs to be between the ages of 26 and 33 years old, and HBO stresses they need to be a very strong actress. This sounds like another role that will have a lot of screen time, or perhaps just an intense role. Okay, so that's your Game of Thrones news roundup. Like, subscribe, and come back for more videos.